Once upon a time, a traveler was driving alone on a dark and foreboding road. It was the dead of night, and his only companion was the hum of the engine and the silent corpses in the graveyard he passed by. All of a sudden, there was a ghastly hiss of putrid steam, and the needle of his temperature gauge began to rise insidiously towards the H. The traveler pulled over and raised the bonnet of his car. Through the shrouds of mist in the bowels of his engine, he could just see a tiny mysterious artifact. It was black as the night and brittle as old bone, and a mighty gash had ripped across it, as though the very spirits of hell had clawed it open. Through it, the lifeblood of his coolant was gushing out, the soul of his engine weeping and cascading out into the dark earth. The traveler raised his eyes to the dark sky and let out a cry of horror and anguish, for he knew without doubt that he had just fallen victim to the cursed water plug.
So this is the part. It's just a tiny little ridiculously small rubber bung, and it basically goes in the back of the engine, down below the cam sensor, and basically if this fails, then all the water leaks out of your radiator, the car overheats, and you're left stranded on the side of the road, and there is pretty much nothing you can do other than get a replacement bung and put it on the car. So the best thing to do is to make sure that you replace this as part of a routine maintenance plan. So I'm going to do the one on my car, and hopefully this will last another 10-15 years or so. I mean, this one I think has been on the car since it was new, which would be 25 years now. So hopefully if I put another one on, it'll last a good long time. So unfortunately, I think this is going to be a real bastard to get to. As you can see, it's like right down in the back of the engine there under the cam angle sensor. I think what I'm going to try and do is remove some of this cabling, get that out the way, and then that should give me a little bit more access to get my hand down in there. The other thing I don't know is when I take the plug off, whether all the water is just going to drain out of the tank. So I do have some spare mix from when I redid all the cooling system pipework. So if I do lose some water, I can replace it without ruining the mix of coolant to water. So let's get started. So of course the major problem with this job is getting access to the plug. It is right down at the back of the engine. It's literally directly underneath the cam angle sensor. So there is very, very little access to it. And if you have a right-hand drive car, you also have the added problem that the clutch system, all the pipework for that is exactly where you would need a bit of space to get some pliers or something like that in there. So the best thing to do is to try and get some pliers onto it. So you can actually get your hand down here and get it up into the back of the engine there. And then if you remove this cabling here, you can also get your hand down in there. So it gives you a little bit of access, but you can't really get both hands in properly. And the other problem is that if you've got your hand down in there, you can't see what you're doing either, because you can only see by looking kind of diagonally down through the engine like that. So it's a bit of a fiddle, but I think the best access is really with a pair of pliers to get onto the clip and then basically lever the clip off, and then you can get the plug off from there. Okay, so after over an hour of fighting, I've finally got this damn clip off. It actually came off fairly easily, but then it dropped down inside the engine and I couldn't find it for over an hour, and then I found it, and then I was pulling it out the engine and I dropped it again and I lost it for another hour. I've had to take the whole under tray off the car, jack up the car onto the axle stands. It's been a complete and utter nightmare, but there it is. This is the clip. So now what I need to do is pull off the rubber bung and replace it with this. Okay, sit rep. So I've now recruited my glamorous assistant Rachel, who has managed to get the end of the cap off, but it is split and part of the cap is still attached. Don't know if you can see. So now all the water has now poured out of the radiator. Yeah, there's the end. But you can see it was in pretty bad shape, so it's probably a good thing that we did this, quite honestly. But now all the water is emptied out of the radiator, which I'm not quite sure how, because it's quite high up on the engine, so I wouldn't have thought it would have emptied the entire system, but there we go. So we're now trying to remove the rest of the bung so we can put the new one on. But it is the most awkward, difficult place to reach. You can't get pliers in there properly, you can't get a knife in there properly, so we are struggling. So, word of advice, if you're going to attempt this job, make sure you have all day, because it's not a quick job by any means. Okay, so we have finally got it off. It was a mission and a half. As you can see, it is fucked. The rubber has gone all brittle and basically started just falling apart as we were trying to take it off. So it's a good thing that we did. This is why you should probably replace it, because as you can see, after 25 years, it is in really poor shape. So if we hadn't done this, it probably would have failed at some point in the future. And there's the new one for comparison. It looks a lot better. So now we've got to try and get the new one on and secured, and then we'll have to re-bleed the cooling system because half of the coolant has now come out. Right, so we managed to get the new replacement rubber bung onto the pipe, which is all good. And then we tried to fit this bloody cursed clip back on again. This is the same clip that cost us nearly 2 hours in time looking for it when it dropped down inside the engine. So we tried to fit the clip over the bung, and we have now managed to bend the clip. So it is now foobarred. So after all this time searching for this clip and getting it back, including jacking the car up, taking the under tray off, taking the wheels off, and various other rather annoying procedures, we are now abandoning this same clip, and we went to B&Q and we bought a thing, which I don't even know what this is for, probably for plumbing in like a washing machine or something, but it's got one of these, I don't know what you call them, a hose clip, I think it's called, which is probably going to be about the right size to use to secure that bung in place. Okay, so we are now trying to get the... Oh, have you got it? Oh, you got it! Yes! So we've had to remove the entire... forget what this is called, but this actuates the spark plugs, which is a bit of a pain to remove, but it's given us access to the back now. So we've now managed to get the socket onto the hose clamp, and hopefully we should be able to tighten it up now. So
this is most definitely a two-man job.
Indeed. If you think you can do this job in like 2 minutes or in 10 minutes while you're waiting to do something else, don't attempt it, trust me. Okay, so we've connected the hose clamp. I'm not 100% happy with how it's gone on because it's tighter in some places than others. But what we've done now is refilled the system with coolant, and I'm now just running the engine until it warms up, just to bleed the system through. So basically what you do, you fill up the coolant to the top, and then you run the engine until this top hose gets warm, and that's basically going to circulate the coolant through the system, and hopefully get rid of any airlocks. It'll also allow us to see whether there's any leak at the back there, where we put that hose clamp on. Fingers crossed it'll work. but if not, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and try and think of...
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, exactly. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so I've been running the engine now for a while, and it's all up to temperature. I've bled the radiator system again, got all the air bubbles out, then closed up the cap. Been checking to see if there's any like steam, or water dripping out of the back there. But the engine is up to temperature, so the system is pressurized. And as far as I can see, there's nothing untoward happening at the back there. So for now, I think we're all right. We'll just have to monitor that and see how we go in the future.